Hello, how are you? And it's really a great privilege to come again and to talk about the subject of propaganda. Now, propaganda is a powerful tool that is used by those that would advance an agenda. These people know what they want, and they want to use all the resources at their disposal, package them well, and then send out information. And in fact, the word propaganda itself, as we have, a layman's definition, it has to do with disseminating, sending out information that is true or is not true. And that information, you aim to win the attention of those that would listen, but also to distort what is true, creating sometimes a wrong perception in those that would hear and those that would, pay attention to the things that you are hearing. So propaganda has been around for many years, many generations, even before the Christian faith. You just need to read the book of Matthew, for instance, when those men who were guarding the tomb of Jesus Christ, when Jesus rose from the dead, they realized they were in trouble. They were going to be executed. So they go and talk to the authorities, to the Pharisees and other people. And what do? They pay them money and tell them to keep quiet. And what happens is that certain information goes out to the community that Jesus actually perhaps did not, his body was stolen by his disciples so that we might believe that he did not actually rise from the dead, but rather his body was taken. And so he leaves us with the idea that Jesus really never died. And that is in sync with some other religions that seem to teach that Jesus Christ never died. In fact, he was never crucified. Islam, for example, has about two or three theories about that. But also in the book of the Gospel of Barnabas, that Gnostic gospel, that spurious gospel, it gives that idea as well. And the Gospel of Thomas, those are not part of the authentic gospel. So, but what we're saying is that those books are read even today, and they send out a wrong information to those that would listen and read. But well, in this unit, like we have said, we're talking about propaganda as a tool towards mind manipulation, but also at the same time to manipulate populations, uh, age groups, and all sorts of people that would read, so that people are reading a narrative and a script that may not be correct, a narrative that is not what was original. And in our country, like Zambia recently, we went to the polls. Before the election, there was a lot of lobbying, there was a lot of campaigning, and a lot of lies during that campaign. What was it? It was propaganda. Now, we're using the word propaganda in the negative sense. Sometimes perhaps it's rarely used in the positive sense, but it may just be used positively. But propaganda has to do with sending out, teaching, sending and instructing people in an ideology. And those that are enemies of the gospel of Jesus Christ are experts at propaganda. They know what to say, how to say, when to say, and the dosages that in which they're going to send it and give it to people, so that people who are taking in what they are saying do not realize that their minds actually are being poisoned, or they're being fed that which is not right. So in apologetics, if you are going to be an effective apologist, you need to know that propaganda is there. But how does propaganda uh, take shape, or how does it succeed? And how are people confused? Well, there are various reasons, as our assigned reading in this unit shows. Many times people care for their reputation. And so when a propaganda or a saying is coming which is in favor and might help them, propaganda can cause certain people because they want to be politically correct. So what do? They gravitate towards what they think will help them. But also sometimes propaganda can be used to destroy images of people, completely shattered and destroyed. And the person wonders what happened to their image, their goodwill, the things that they have stood for all these years. I'll put it to you. Propaganda is at work. And the enemies of the gospel know that if they are going to undercut, teach the wrong things, say that the gospel message is hate speech, say and show that the Bible is one of the most murderous books, especially in the Old Testament. There's genocide, there's what type of a God is this? I can't believe the Bible. One professor from one of these Ivy schools said, look, I cannot allow my son or my daughter to read the Bible because it is so violent. Another lady in Europe even sued to argue that the Bible should be outlawed because it's such a violent book. And when I read that, I laughed. But that's propaganda. And so people have taught us, they say that those that are religious do not want to think, they have short-circuited their brains, they do not want to use their minds. So anybody who is religious must be mad. Certain nuts and bolts are loose in the head. That is propaganda. So we have said some, because propaganda is good and it might build them, they gravitate to it. Others, because it damages them, so they want to keep away from it, and they use that propaganda, that's the enemies of the gospel, for example, to destroy the image of Jesus Christ. But there are many other ways in which propaganda is a powerful tool. And I have listed what those are in the reading assignment for this unit. But how can a person defend themselves? What are the antidotes? What are some of the things that you and I can equip ourselves with so that we are not misled or we are not discouraged? Well, some of them I mentioned when I was, and I think I'll mention them when we're talking about mind manipulation in a later unit. But I would like to say that you must defend, you must build fences around your mind. In other words, you must have a sieve. You put up defenses and you'll be able to have what are known as grids. And those you're using the biblical lenses, biblical framework to judge things. So when the information comes, you weigh it against scripture and you'll be able to say, that is right, that is wrong. That is not right about the Bible. That is incorrect. That assertion they're saying, it cannot be true. In other words, you build fences. And one of the ways, know the scriptures, internalize the scriptures. And I would like to say further is that you need to be, socially intelligent, and you need to know which sources are reliable and which sources are not. Sometimes even the so-called reliable sources or credible sources might get it wrong, or they all have an agenda, especially when you're watching these news outlets, whether print or digital. All of them have an agenda. All of them without exception. And if you know their philosophy, whether they're humanistic, whether they're atheistic, whether they are there to support the gospel or against the gospel, it comes out in the way that they report. They can choose to make the narrative the way they want it. They can twerk it For instance, if you are listening to Fox News, for example, it leans towards the Republicans in the US. If you're listening to CNN, most likely it will lean towards the Democrats. If you're listening to, any Christian broadcasting network, obviously, the larger part of the content of that radio station or TV, whatever it might be, will be the Christian message. So each one has an agenda. There's no neutrality. Some people begin to say, "Oh, we want to be secular, we want to be neutral." Friends, there's nothing like neutrality or even objectivity in that sense of the word. Each one of us has lenses which we use to determine what is true and what's not true. It will surprise you that even scientists who are supposed to be empirical, supposed to be, neutral and just dealing with facts as they come, you'll be surprised to learn that even they come with a baggage, with a worldview, with a lens, and that begins to bear on how they interpret a certain set of information. That is propaganda. So today in the universities, in the colleges, and now even in the seminaries, there is this view and thought that presuppositional apologetics it doesn't make sense. In fact, these presuppositionalists don't want to think. And so they gather around a multitude, a group, generations of men and women who want, in the name of being objective, men and women who are learned and exposed, they gather together and begin to expose and oppose the biblical narrative as it is. So anybody who stands on scripture may not really be welcome. So they'll be flushed out of the public universities and flushed out of and then they find themselves in corners somewhere where the influence is diminished and they cannot affect the world as they ought. So what are we saying? We're simply saying that propaganda is real. So you need to know what's going on, socially intelligent, and be able to connect, look at information, and read it properly and understand it. But the third thing that I would like to say in our propaganda is that we need to be careful what we read, how we read, and the details to which we read. Usually, as I say, the devil is in the details. Well, that statement may not exactly be right, but it gives a principle. Read the details. The outside might look very nice, but read the details carefully and be able to tease apart and be able to read in between the lines and be able to say, this is true. This cannot be true. This is in line with Scripture. This cannot be in line with Scripture. Because we are living in very dangerous time, as the apostle says in Ephesians 5. The days are evil. Anybody who comes under the cloak of religion must not be trusted there and then. Recently, like I said, we had elections in Zambia. And before the elections came, we had all sorts of prophets prophesying, predicting what would happen, and they were even coming out dogmatically. This candidate will win, that candidate will win. But when their prophecies, failed, they were not true, the guys either moved away from social media, but others who are dependent on social media to get their money and everything quickly apologized and said, there was a change in the heavenly realms. I used my emotions. God had said something and I was not listening properly. Now, that's a very, very subtle way to come back into the game. But it also tells us those are false prophets. So, friends, what are we saying? Is that we need to meticulously read. And Christians are very weak at reading and analyzing. Somehow we suspend our minds. Of course, we are afraid veering to becoming what are known as, rationalists and those that are just logical for nothing, and so on. But friends, look at the Apostle Paul. He was a very logical man. And when he's arguing, look at Acts 17 and other parts of Scripture. Look at the book of Romans. Those are robust arguments that we get from Christian people. So what is propaganda? It is information that is being sent out. And whether it is good, the purpose is good or not, you need to read. And Christian people need to pay attention. If you're going to do the work of apologetics, you must be able to know how to confront propaganda, to dismantle propaganda, or remove the fangs and the venom in that propaganda and lay bare what the truth could be. That is true everywhere. Even in our families, those of us who are in families, you notice sometimes we fight, sometimes we argue, even if we live in different homes. What is going on? There's propaganda that is going on. There's information, misinformation, correct information, and so on. So it's just flying around and causing confusion. The Christian who is going to defend the Christian faith, they must be able to know what is true and have an ability to sift and tell what is correct and what is not correct. That's a skill you and I must develop. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes discernment, it takes patience, it takes developing a meticulous, careful mind so that we might arrive at something that is good. I hope that this introduction is helpful, and I pray that this will help you to answer the questions that are in this unit about propaganda and the danger of it and the deleterious effects that come if we ignore it, and so on. So read the assignment, and then also respond. God bless you.